Hey guys, we are on day 283 in our Bible reading plan, and today we're reading in the book of Matthew chapters 5, 6, and 7. So today we're going to get into Jesus teaching the Sermon on the Mount. It begins with the Beatitudes. We're told that he goes out to the mountainside and he sits down to teach the crowd of people that have gathered around. And he begins with this beautiful blessing. The Beatitudes are just that. They're blessings. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven, he begins. And then he begins teaching from this place of blessing. He says, "Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." And then he calls the people the salt and the light of the world. He says, in the same way that a town on a hill cannot be hidden, you should let your light shine before a man. And, I love the imagery here as someone who lives in the valley below Lake Tahoe. When we look up at night in the dark night sky, we see the brightness of Tahoe. We see the light of the city that is up on the mountainside, and it shines bright for all to see. And that is the image that Jesus tells his followers, that he's teaching the crowd, the people, that they were meant to be that light. And he's connecting that to the truth and the promises of God made to Abraham that we have read over this last year, the covenant that God makes with Abraham. And something that's really important about the Sermon on the Mount and the teachings of Jesus that we have to remember is that he says here, he addresses the fulfillment of the law. He addresses the fulfillment of this covenant. And he says, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them." Jesus has come to fulfill the law and the prophets. So these teachings that he's laying out in the Sermon on the Mount, they're not to annihilate the law or get rid of the law. He is correcting their understanding of the law. He is correcting the way they have been practicing the commandments and the laws in the land. He is elevating mercy, compassion, love, a right heart, a heart after God, over legalism. And he does it over and over again. The Sermon on the Mount is this beautiful flipping of the understanding of the people. And what we have to understand, as we've read in the book of John, that Jesus is not just Messiah. He is the Messianic King, the promised one, the anointed one. He is God incarnate, the Word become flesh. And so he is the one, if anyone could tell us what these laws meant, could tell us what the standard for proper or right living should be, what the motivations from our heart should have been, it's Jesus. And so as we're reading through the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus covers a lot of topics. He covers things like retributive justice, an eye for an eye. He's going to talk about giving to the needy, prayer, fasting, storing up treasures in heaven. That's all in chapter 6. He's going to talk about judging others, beginning in chapter 7. And he's going to talk about asking God for provision. Ask, seek, knock. God will provide. He talks about salvation, the narrow and wide gates. He talks about true and false prophets, true and false disciples. And then he ends the Sermon on the Mount talking about the wise and foolish builders. And in verse 26 of chapter 7, verse 26, he says this, "But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash." And so we understand from this that this teaching is meant to be a cornerstone, a foundation point for our faith, a foundation for the way that we follow Christ, a foundation for the way that we live our very lives in this world. That Jesus did not come to completely abolish the law and all of the prophets, but to fulfill them, to do a greater work that we couldn't do for ourselves, and to teach us what the Lord our God desires of us, so that we could live in ways that honor, please him in this world, and so that we could be the salt and the light to all of the nations that the people of God were always meant to be. I love to hear how God is speaking to you through his word today. So drop a comment in the Bible reading app and let's talk some more. There's a ton in here, guys. There's some really good teaching here, and I'd love to just hear how God's speaking to you through his word today. Have a great day, guys.